Bill Sherman lives in Nashville, Tennessee. For most of his ministry, Bill has served as a pastor. During his 30 years at Woodmont Baptist Church in Nashville, 900 members volunteered to serve with the Bold Missions Program. Also, through those years, Woodmont partnered with a large African American church to frequently hold joint worship services, the Maston legacy. Bill Sherman.
Growing up in Fort Worth, Texas, I first met Dr. Maston when I was about 7 years old. Our pastors, E.D. Dunlap, Floyd Chafin, Woodson Arms, would frequently have him come and fill the pulpit. And when my toes could reach the ground floor, I could sit on the front row, which I did. And I can remember Dr. Connor, who stood up there and seemed like larger than life, and occasionally he would whistle through his false teeth. And we had a number of seminary professors that preached, and so I got to know Dr. Maston personally. And then after my years at Baylor, we came with my brother to Southwestern Seminary. Man of his stature, as all of us know, has reached all of us in a very profound way. I'd like to mention four things briefly. Number one, I was impressed how he emphasized if you're going to be in church work, you have to love God, yes, but you have to love people. Now, I've been in church work 60 years like many of you, and sometimes you get to be like the cannibal who visited the psychiatrist because he was fed up with people. And, sometimes they're overbearing, and it's tough to love them all, but we're called upon to do it. Now, remember, he said the basic premise of Christian ethics, biblical ethics, is the love of God and the love of people. Secondly, I was impressed by his courage. In the years of the 40s and 50s, most folks in Baptist life were silent about the race issue and about the women's issue, and Dr. Maston was not. And I determined if I ever had the opportunity, and the opportunity came for when we pastored University Heights Baptist Church in Stillwater, Oklahoma, we had a college council, and Harold Fields, one of the first black students at University Heights, was the president of that cabinet. Then we moved on to Woodmont. Second year we were there, we had a joint worship service, as has been mentioned, with the 15th Avenue Baptist Church. Received bomb threats, nasty phone calls, and all the rest. A couple of charter members visited me on Tuesday and asked me if we would call it off. The pastor of the other church, Edic Jones, about 2 weeks before we would have the service, he called upon the phone. He says, "Bill?" "Yes." "Enoch?" "Hello, Enoch." He says, "You catching hell?" I said, "Well, yes." He said, "From your older members?" And I said, "That's right." He says, "I'm catching hell from our younger members. We have some, don't have anything to do with Whitey, And we were able to have 27 joint services, and we were on the ABC affiliate, reaching about 1.5 million penetration of people. And it was a great witness to our city. And in fact, Governor Ned McWhirter called the Woodmont pulpit, the 30 years we were there, the conscience of Middle Tennessee, and we were thankful. A third thing that impressed me was about how he emphasized home, marriage, and family. It made a very profound impression on me. In fact, my wife and I have been married 60 years, and somebody asked me the other day at church, "How'd you pull it off?" And I said, "Well, when I got married, I looked at her and said, 'Honey, there's nothing in this world I wouldn't do for you.' She looked back at me and said, 'Sweetheart, I feel the same way. Nothing in this world I wouldn't do for you.' So for 60 years, we've been getting along beautifully together, doing nothing for each other." Well, that's not exactly the way it works, as you all well know. But I remember every Christmas, as these fellows will remember, we went into the Maston's home. And we could see, as you have already heard, all the things he taught. He was not two-faced. He was not a Pharisee. And that leads me to the fourth idea. I appreciated his humanness. He had all academic regalia, you name it, he had done it, written the books, limelight, you would never know it. He was one of the most down-to-earth human beings. Let me tell you one of my finest remembrances. I had the privilege of playing football at Baylor back in the early 50s. Baylor was invited to play his team, University of Tennessee, in the 1957 Sugar Bowl. Johnny Mavers was All-American. Tennessee was number 2 in the nation, and they were all laughing about Baylor. They had lost 2 ball games. So I walked into class. I never wore my letter jacket on campus, never. And I remember I jestfully, before the class began, stood up and says, by the way, you guys, Baylor's been invited to the Sugar Bowl. Did y'all know I played ball at Baylor? Dr. Maston was standing up at the lectern, and he chuckled and says, Billy Don, he says, Tennessee's going to give your boys a long day. I said, Dr. Maston, I happened to scrimmage against those guys, and I'll tell you what I'll do. If Baylor wins a game, I get a free cut. And if Tennessee wins, I'll write you an extra paper. And he chuckled and he says, I'll take you up on that. If you don't remember, I got the free cut. But he was such a wonderful Christian human being. He practiced what he preached. When I think of Dr. Maston, I remember how he said time and time again in class, do not merely be a Christian. Drop the article, be Christian. That's T.B. Maston.
Thank you, Bill.